Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz, your host of the Raiders Report. And coming up here on today's show, I got 10 Raiders players that can make the 53-man roster that would be a surprise player to make the roster. Now, the way that I ended up doing this is the 10 guys that you're about to see, and I ranked them from 10 all the way down to 1, from least likely to make the team to the most likely to make the team. I put out a 53-man roster video probably about, 2 weeks ago. So out of those players, okay, that didn't make the roster, that's the qualification. If you're like, Mitch, I don't know who made the roster, go back and check out my last 53-man roster video. That way you can see all the players that did make it, didn't make it. If they didn't make it, they're featured on today's show. But you know what? I know the nation likes a challenge, and quite frankly, I like a challenge. I like when somebody comes to me with something, they're like, you know what? I bet you can't do this. I bet that there's not a single person out there that can comment Raiders 100 times on this video. We are doing the August Comment King Challenge. And you know what? I did reverse jumping jacks on our live show on Friday. If one person, who's it going to be? If you're going to be that one person, I got to do 100 reverse jumping jacks on Monday's show here on the Raiders Report. There's the challenge. It's on the table. Who's here for the taking? Here we go. Let's go to number 10 here for our surprise roster candidates. I'm going to go with Alex Bachman. And Bachman is a very intriguing player. This is somebody that I said has a 0% chance of making the roster just a few months ago. But Bachman has been, impressing at training camp, been making some big plays, been a little bit of a reliable safety blanket at times with all the injuries to Jalen Guyton, with the retirement of Michael Gallup. And we know that Devontae, Jacoby, Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers are obviously all going to make this roster. Quite frankly, though, after that, when you look at all those names down there below, I think it is possible that this team ends up keeping 5 wide receivers, and Bowers is probably going to be listed as a tight end. So, that means that out of the names that were down there below, that tells me that 2 receivers potentially are going to end up making this roster. So if Bachman can prove himself and he can go out there and he do his thing, who knows? Maybe he has an opportunity to make this squad. Coming in here at number 9, I'm going to go with Kana'i Mauga. And Mauga, I thought, was battling with Darian Butler for that 6th linebacker spot. And I know when I say 6 linebackers, it might sound like a lot. But if you watch the new kickoff return rules and the new kickoff return game, based on the Hall of Fame game, based on some of the things that Tom McMahon has said, they flirted with the idea of being able to keep that extra linebacker, not to put out there on defense, but to use him in a, more of a run-stopping field, because you've heard a lot of coaches say that the new kickoff returns are a lot closer to running the football, so there's going to be some teams out there that want that extra linebacker. So I don't really want you to think of Mauga as being that linebacker. Think of Mauga as being a special teams tackler for this team, and because of that, maybe he ends up making the squad. Coming in here at number 8, I'm going to go with Tyreik McAllister. This is a guy that's got legit 4.3 speed, has been working a little bit from time to time at special teams, punt returns, kick returns, and he is a hybrid of a running back, wide receiver type of player, and you can't really teach speed. But, let's say the Raiders want to use a player like Dylan Lowby more in the passing game. They don't want to use him as much maybe in special teams. Or, Amir Abdullah kind of in the exact same frame. Maybe they want to use Trey Tucker a little bit more. It's more of a depth move, but when you have as much speed, and he has been impressive in terms of just the overall ability that he has shown in practice from that special teams point. If you're Las Vegas, you have to improve on offense, obviously. Your defense has to be stout. But, what's really, I think, going to separate teams this season, and it might be just a fraction of a difference, it's the teams that figure out what it takes to be successful with these new special teams rules, with these new kickoff return rules, and maybe Tyreik McAllister is a player that, can prove to be a viable depth option just in case of an injury. Let's go to number 7 here on my list for surprise roster candidates. It's Keelan Doss. And Doss was signed right before I was getting ready to go on my bachelor party, literally a week from today. I think he got signed on Wednesday last week. And Doss was a player that we talked about saying, hey, he's got connections with AP all the way back from actually high school. Also got connection with Telesco. He was on the Chargers practice squad in 2022, 2023. Grew up a Raider fan, and because of the injuries that I kind of talked about earlier when I was talking about Bachman, Doss does have at least a shot to make this roster in terms of being the I think he's a good sixth wide receiver, where if Doss can prove that he can be a bigger target, he is a little bit taller than some of our other receivers down there. I personally think UDFAs might be the better way to go, but I do think because of those connections that Doss has, could be a surprise player to make this 53-man roster. And I'll say this. I've done this show for a long time. We went 26 straight months being the number one channel here at Chat Sports, and I carry that with a lot of pride, right? Like, I'm the OG here at the Raiders Report. I'm the old man at Chat Sports. But we are now back-to-back months being the number 2 channel here. Our Steelers channel has been kicking ass, taking names, and they deserve their flowers. But I want to be able to get back to number 1. And you know what? I think that we need more subscribers here. So the way that we're going to do it is, to me, the nation is a powerful, powerful group. And I think if we get a bunch of Raiders fans together against a bunch of Steeler fans together, we're going to come out on top. So I'm asking from the bottom of my heart, if you take pride in being number 1, because if you ain't first, you're last, hit that subscribe button. Let's get the Raiders Report back to number 1 in our Chat Sports rankings. Let's go to number 6 here in our surprise roster candidates. It is Matthew Butler at defensive tackle. And Butler's probably one of the most difficult players that I can wrap my mind around because I don't necessarily know what the fit is for him in this defense. They want him to be better. It's just the Raiders have a lot of talent at defensive tackle. And because they have a lot of extra talent at defensive tackle, and because a player who you're going to hear about here in a little bit has been stepping up, what if they decide to move Tyree Wilson a little bit more to defensive tackle instead of just out on the edge? Is he better than Nesta Jade Silvera? I'm not quite necessarily sure. They want to believe in Byron Young, and Byron Young, from the notes that I have received, has shown that he is the more reliable player than Nesta Jade, more reliable than Matthew Butler, more reliable than Marquand McCall. However, though, Butler falls into that old regime where 2 years ago he's drafted by McDaniels, drafted by Ziegler, and he's having a hard time finding his role because the Raiders want to be physical. That's not Matthew Butler's game. He's more of a finesse defensive tackle. It's not quite working out, and you could see him starting, I think, to lose a little bit of confidence in practice because, he's getting whooped on quite a bit. Coming up next here on the show, and reminder, these are surprise roster candidates. These are players that I did not have make my 53-man roster, and if any of these guys, maybe minus like the top 3 on this list, I would be surprised about. If Matthew Butler made the team, I would be surprised. I would also be surprised if I got a really awesome deal from a ticket because, to me, you go look at how expensive some tickets are right now. When I go on Game Time and I can know that I can get that last-minute ticket at the lowest price guaranteed, and you get a good price, it's a good surprise type of feeling. And shout out to our sponsor, Game Time, for hooking up Raider Nation here, because I want you to take the guesswork out of buying tickets, maybe to an MLB game. The NBA is going to be coming up here soon. NFL, obviously. And I want you to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS. That's CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. And with the Raiders preseason and regular season right around the corner, I think Game Time is the perfect app for Raider Nation, and I love their last-minute deals. I think the other reason why Game Time legitimately is perfect for Raiders fans is because there's literally so much to do in Vegas. Like, Chugs and I always laugh. Like, we're going out to Vegas August 14th, and, we were always like, oh, we should do this, this, and this. And then sometimes, like, we'll go on Game Time, and we'll just be like, all right, what can we do randomly right now that's like 30 minutes from now, an hour from now, and you get, like, a steal of a price on it? That's why I love Game Time. Now, also, like, they can also hook you up with the all-in prices, and if anybody plans on going to the Raiders-Vikings game, maybe some people live up in the Minnesota area, like, you can go to a Vikings-Raiders game right now. You can get in for $12. I mean, that's unbelievable. Like, imagine. It's like what it costs to get a hot dog at Allegiant Stadium. You can go and watch a game thanks to the Game Time app. So, one more time here. Obviously, terms apply. Download the Game Time app. Lowest price guaranteed. I love the all-in prices. This link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Let's get into the top 5. I got Chris Smith coming in here at safety, and I do actually think Smith could be a good fit on other rosters. It's just, unfortunately for him, he's the 5th guy. They drafted Trey Taylor this season, so he's got that boost. He's going to make the team. They love what they have in Isaiah Paulomeo, and quite frankly, Isaiah Paulomeo might be one of the most underappreciated players that we have from a depth perspective for what he's going to be able to bring to this defense as a linebacker safety hybrid. Also, what he's going to be able to bring on special teams. They love what he's bringing. You got Epps, you got Merrick, and then it kind of puts you in this difficult situation here with Smith. Quite frankly, I also thought about putting Jaden Grant on this show because I know the Raiders like Jaden Grant, and he's been a fun player this offseason. He's been a player that's gotten some love from Max Crosby. If you're getting love from Max Crosby, you're getting love from me as far as I'm concerned. Number 4 in our surprise roster candidates, I'm going to go with Tulu Griffin. And if a UDFA wide receiver makes this list, it's got to be Tulu. Ramel Keaton had a great practice on Friday, which got a lot of notoriety, and he was out there doing his thing, and he absolutely deserves this thing. I'll also tell you this, Ramel did not make my list here. But because Tulu has that ability on special teams and as a receiver, and just from a talent standpoint, if I were to be betting my chips on which receiver from the UDFA class that we have, and then, quite frankly, you could even include Bachman and that, Keelan Doss, who's most likely to make the team, I'm going to go with Griffin because he's a hell of a player. Let's go to the next guy here. Coming in here at number 3, it's Jordan Meredith. And Meredith simply makes this list because of the offensive line depth. Jackson Powers-Johnson's banged up. There, Munford got banged up. He's okay now. Colton Miller's been banged up here a little bit. But, Cody Whitehair's been bad. Dylan Parham, he's still going to start. But, Parham hasn't looked as good as what you're hoping either. And, I know that Whitehair has experience in the Luke Getsy offense. But at the same time, dude, Whitehair's not looked good at training camp at all. He's been one of the biggest losers out there. Could you potentially look at a Jordan Meredith to be that extra guy? Are you concerned about the depth here with the injuries that they have at offensive line? If the Raiders decide to keep 10 offensive linemen, that's where I think Jordan Meredith and that whole equation comes into consideration. If the Raiders keep only 9, I don't see how Meredith ends up making it. If they keep 10 because they're just concerned about some of those injuries, then that's where I think you could see a player like Meredith end up making this team. Before I get into the biggest sleeper from training camp, and there's one name that I continuously get notes on, and there's one player that is moving up the depth chart quickly. I'm going to tell you who that is in just a moment because he deserves his flowers as well. Before I get into that, though, reminder, dinner with Jeremy, Chugs, and I, August 14th. If you're going to go out there to the Raiders joint practice, Chugs and I will be there with Taino Raider and David Zahn. As soon as that practice is over, I'm going to Joel's Chop House, located inside of Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. Make a reservation on Open Table. In the notes, put Raiders Report. It is limited space, so please make the reservation quicker. The address is down there below. And if you're like, Mitch, man, I really wish I could be able to join because we always say it's the best dinner Jeremy, Chugs, and I have ever had. If you can't join, you're like, hey, I'll be there for Raiders-Steelers Week 6. Make a reservation now. Go on Open Table. Put Raiders Report. I promise you this, Joel's Chop House. He's going to hook you up. He already told me. Let's go to number 2 here. It's Charles Snowden. And I'm telling you this right now. I'm putting Charles Snowden on my next 53-man roster video. This guy has been working his tail off. He went to the Pass Rush Summit with Max, Von Miller, that whole thing. And he has been working his flipping tail off. He is moving up this depth chart. And quite frankly, I think he's challenging Janarius Robinson right now for that 4th defensive end. You know, it's Mad Max, Malcolm, Tyree. Those 3 guys are a lock to make this roster. But you know what? I think every other person on that list, I can make an argument for why they shouldn't make it. David Ago will make it because he's the International Pathway Program player. But, real talk, Charles Snowden has been working his tail off, and he is challenging Janarius Robinson for that other spot. Number 1, and this might not be a surprise for a lot of people that watch this show, I'll be honest, but, Anthony Brown Jr., I did not have in my 53-man roster projection. I thought Carter Bradley could potentially do it. I am willing to say that I'm going to take that L. You could throw the tomatoes at me because Anthony Brown is clearly, and I mean clearly, the quarterback 3. The only way that this guy doesn't make the roster at this point is if the Raiders want to keep 2 QBs and they want to put him on the practice squad because remember with the new NFL rules, you can elevate a QB from the practice squad every single week and he can be on your active roster. But, I don't really think another team would go out and claim Anthony Brown. Carter Bradley's still doing a fine job. It's just he's been better. And because of that, I got to put him at number 1 here on this one. So I think he is a sleeper to make this team. He was the number one player that if I were to do a 53-man, he would guarantee were to make it. So because of that, Anthony Brown Jr. comes in here at number 1. We make a lot of videos here on the show. We do stuff all the time, and quite frankly, I don't think there's anybody out there that makes as much content as we do. And if we're going to bring that commitment to excellence, I expect the same thing for y'all. If you want to be able to interact with me on IG and Twitter, for those of you that have been watching our live shows, you've noticed we've been bringing in a lot more questions from Twitter, X. We've been bringing in a lot more questions from Instagram because I want to interact with the nation as much as humanly possible. So even if you can't join a live show, follow me on IG, follow me on Twitter. Don't be afraid to tweet at me, #Raiders, and if you at me, your questions will be on the show. If you're on IG and you follow me and I go on my Instagram story and I say, hey, submit some questions, guess what? You have a chance to get them here on the Raiders Report.